Okay, Chair, we're live on YouTube, so I will hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual LED monitoring forum meeting on the 1st of March 2022. In the absence of Councillor Hawkins, I am your chair for this meeting, Councillor Paul Miller. I would also like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. Based on the decision of Council, we will continue to hold virtual meetings until the 11th of May 2022. I would like to remind both members and the public attending or watching that this council has delegated much of its decision-making powers to our senior officers. May I remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please turn any telephone devices off or to silent. In the event of a break in internet connection, please bear with us as we try to reconnect after 15 minutes. If we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of forum members here present. So Sarah, to read that out now. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I'll start with yourself, Chair. So Councillor Miller.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott. Councillor Dent.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor De Salem.
Present. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward. Councillor Hookway. Councillor Hookway.
He's on mute.
Apologies. Present. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon. Councillor Young.
Present. Yeah. Oh, my name's correct now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pook. And Councillor Rowland.
Present. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. So we are quiet. Thank you.
Hello, Chair. Sorry, another late arrival. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Beat me to it there, Councillor.
Thank you.
Okay, so agenda item 1, public speaking. There are no members of the public registered to speak this morning. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 25th of January 2022. If there are any members with any comment on the minutes, please raise your electronic hand. If there are no issues, I'll assume that you're all content that they can be agreed. I'm seeing no electronic hands. So I think we can move on from that. Agenda item 3 are apologies. Sarah, to confirm apologies, please.
So we have apologies from Councillor Sam Hawkins.
Okay, thanks very much, Sarah. On to agenda item 4, which are declarations of interest. Are we going to do this by a roll call, Sarah, or shall we? I mean, I'll start by declaring the interest I always declare, which is member of LED. That's usually the only interest we have. I'm just wondering whether we have hands up, electronic hands up for.
Yep, we can do it on a show of hands.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott.
Also, membership of LED.
Thank you. Councillor Dent.
Also a member of the LED.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
And
Thanks
I
very
think
much.
that is everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your assistance there, Sarah. Brilliant. So agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency to this morning. Agenda item 6, confidential or exempt items. There are 4 items which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way, listed as agenda items 11 through to 14. Okay, so now we come on to the content of the meeting. Agenda item 7, which is an update on the leisure strategy. So over to strategic leisure for a verbal update. If Rachel is here, or we have a representative of strategic leisure indeed in the meeting.
Yeah, she is. Sarah, are you able to share the screen, please? Thank you.
Yes, I've just made you co-host, Rachel, so you should be able to share it now.
The presentation.
Sorry.
Sorry, do you want me to put it up? Sorry.
Yes, if you're happy to. Is that okay, Rachel?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you.
I wasn't, just let me just hold on 2 seconds, please, Chair. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to do that. Hang on. Where are we?
No rush, Rachel. We can.
Sorry, I hate this.
We can wait.
I should have had it ready, but I wasn't expecting. Where are we? Okay. Well, while I'm finding it, here we are. Here we are. While I'm finding it, I can give you a very quick verbal update anyway. So in terms of the strategy progress, it's going really well. We've done all of the site visits now, so all of the quality audits are done. All of the mapping for the facilities are done. We're just trying to kind of cross-check that to make sure that if there's any changes to mapping, we can get that done before the draft report comes out to you. So that's all in hand. In terms of the surveys, we've got, so far, we've had 793 responses to the community survey, which is great news. So I want to leave that open for another probably 2 weeks, because that only went out last week. So that's a phenomenal response in, just sort of under 10 days. We've heard back from 67 sports clubs, which is great. It's good. So hopefully we'll get a few more of those. The worst response, which is not unusual, unfortunately, is we've only heard back from 11 schools. Schools seem to be finding it very, very difficult to respond at the moment. But because we've visited all the sites, we've already got the details of their facilities and whether they're open for community use or not. So we'll be able to kind of build on that anyway, but we will, we are chasing them. So overall, I'm really pleased with the survey responses. And in terms of the stakeholder consultation, we've got a couple left to do, but otherwise all of that is completed. So I'm hoping within the next week or so, really to be in a position to actually start drafting the report. I've got a few other bits to kind of go through. So we've received a lot of really useful information on the existing leases with the dual use sites. Sorry. I'm just going through all of those to understand exactly the situation with all of them before coming back and making any recommendations in the report. I think the only other thing, just to be totally transparent, is we have shared notes of meetings with some of the town councils that have requested that. There's nothing controversial whatsoever in any of the meeting notes. It's just really records for their records of the meetings that we've had with them. So I think that's it, Chair, unless any councillors have any queries.
Thank you very much for that, Rachel. Shame about the presentation, but I thought you delivered that.
Sorry, yeah, I can't
well.
find it.
That's absolutely fine. So have we got any non-members outside of the forum that'd like to ask Rachel from Strategic Leisure any questions? I don't think we do, but we do have a member, which is a member from within the forum, which you are, Councillor Rowland. So we'll move on straight to you as you have a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rachel, for that update. You mentioned that there hasn't been a great response from the schools, which is disappointing to hear. And you did say you're going to be doing a follow-up. Is there a poor response down to the schools wondering about who should be responding on their behalf? Was there any confusion about who should be completing the survey?
To be honest, Councillor Rowland, I'm not sure. But all I would say is that our experience over the last 2 years is that school responses have been getting worse. They've always been challenging because you're right, when they go into a school email, they might not mean anything. So we've been trying to target heads of PE because we think that they're the most appropriate people. But depending on the governance within the school, sometimes it's the head teacher or the deputy head that wants to reply, or even a bursar in some cases. So as I said, we will keep chasing them. I would like to get that number up, but because myself and colleagues have visited every single site, private and state education sites, we've seen all of the facilities and we already know whether they're open or not. So you know, if we do feel we've got any gaps, we will ring the schools direct. That can also be a challenge, because you get through, it's a bit like getting through to a doctor's surgery. You know, you have to be kind of dead before they'll talk to you, but sometimes that is challenging. But if we can get through to a helpful receptionist, then we can get passed through. So I'm not overly concerned. It's just a bit of a nuisance, really.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your question, Councillor Rowland. I was going to ask the similar thing. I just wanted to say actually on this item, because it's really is just for noting, to thank Rachel for her work, and to say as well that I completed the survey last night, and it's actually it does take a while to complete. So that number of responses from locally to a consultation from a local, you know, from a local council really through strategic ledger is really impressive, and I'm pleasantly really surprised with the number of people who've engaged with this, which shows obviously a high level of interest with you know, physical activity and sport and leisure in our local area. So Councillor Young has his hand up from within the forum, so over to you, Councillor Young. Thank you.
Just to defend the head teachers and teachers, it was half term last week, so maybe they were actually on holiday last week, so they didn't reply then. But I would get my daughter to reply as soon as possible. Thank
you. Yeah, and I wasn't really having a go. The school survey's actually been out for a while, because there was a separate school survey. But what I'd like to do, Chair, if possible, if this is acceptable to the forum, is by the time of the next forum meeting, all of the surveys will be closed. So I'd like to bring just a short presentation, just headlining the findings from each of them, and perhaps a summary analysis of where that takes us all together with the key issues coming out from the stakeholders, because I don't want there to be any surprises for anyone in the strategy. And I've got to do that work anyway to draft the strategy. So I thought it might be helpful to do that, if that would be acceptable. And I will find the presentation then.
Thanks very much, Rachel. It sounds very acceptable to me. The chair of the usual chair of this meeting, Councillor Sam Hawkins, is away today, so we'll consult with him, as he's obviously in charge, and I'm just standing in for him today. But that sounds like a great idea, and I think I like to think that's something the rest of the forum would agree to. So we're just noting this report, I think. So I think we can move on. I see no other speakers. So thanks again, Rachel, for that update. It's really positive to see that, to see the development of the leisure strategy. So we'll move on now to agenda item 8, which is the LED dashboard for January 2022. A report by the CEO of LED Community Leisure, Peter Gilpin. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm sharing a laptop with Jamie Bryant this morning because mine has crashed. I don't know whether, Bridget, you want to pick up some of the detail on it, or if there are any questions, because I think it's relatively self-explanatory. I mean, basically, in a nutshell, we're recovering now. It always is a good month. January and September are the 2 peak months of the year when people come out of either Christmas or some holidays keen to rejoin gyms and pick up exercise, and I think that's evident in the graphs. And just closing February yesterday, and we've seen continued growth throughout February, but obviously this report does just includes January.
Okay, thanks very much, Peter. Are there any questions on the report from members, or are we happy to note that report and thank Peter? I'll just wait a sec to see whether anybody would like to put their hand up, and we do. We have Councillor Steve Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Peter, for the report. It's just a question on swimming, and it might be hypothetical, so apologies if it is, or if you can't give an answer. But I was listening to one of the news channels, I think it was yesterday, and a lot of, they were interviewing a leisure centre that obviously provides swimming facilities, and they were talking about the huge hike in electricity to keep the water, obviously, at a temperature for swimming. Do you envisage that that is going to cause a problem for LED as well, please?
If I may, Councillor, that's going to be a key discussion when we get to agenda item 11. And the answer is yes.
Apologies for that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Councillor Dent, Alan.
Thanks, Chair. I'm really interested in looking at this because I see, and it's relevant for later on in our discussions, that of all the attendances, swimming is by far and away the biggest. What I just wanted to question was, it says 41.96% compared to what? What does that mean? 41.6.
It's compared to the previous month. Compared to the previous month, Councillor Dent. So yeah, we compare in January and December, which is probably apples and pears, really. You've got the quietest month and the busiest month. So it does look very good. Yeah, and I think probably was a better comparison. In fact, last year would be a better comparison because we were shut. But yeah, you would certainly expect to see a spike January into December.
Right. Okay. No, I was interested.
Wrong way around. Sorry, December into January.
On another track, I went on a studio cycling group exercise yesterday morning, and the class was fuller than I've seen it in months and months. So that's quite a good trend in itself. I mean, there were 20 odd people out of 25 spaces. So normally it's about a dozen. So that's just an indication of the trend, I think. Thank you.
Good to hear. Thanks. Thanks very much for those contributions. I think we can note that report and move on swiftly on to agenda item 9, which is on LED facilities and activities, a report by Jamie Bryant, the Director of Delivery at LED. Jamie, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go through verbatim if that's okay, probably just to pick out a couple of highlights. It would be remiss not to sort of mention the dreaded COVID. I think we are coming out at the other side of that now. The team had some significant challenge sort of over the Christmas and January period with team members being away, but thankfully we are moving out the other side of that now. A key appointment for us in January was our new general manager who joined us from the Premiering group, which was a really positive. He started in Exmouth and hit the ground running really well. Probably, so the other exception really to this report is just a quick update on the projects. Obviously, the council has approved a sum of money to invest into Sidmouth. That work is now underway and is progressing well. So hopefully we'll stop where we are having some positive feedback on that. And likewise, Honiton, we've had a short delay at Honiton. We'll now finish on the 9th of March, so 8 days' time. So that's slipped a little bit, say purely just because of procurement issues that have been well known across the world, really. But that's progressing now and it's going very, very well. So that will open on the 9th. And say they're probably the key bits, I think, probably for an update, really. The key points. Has got any other questions, Chair?
Yeah, and I see Councillor Bruce Desaram has shot his hand up. Bruce.
Good morning, everyone. Morning. Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Just a couple of very quick points. Firstly, to pick up on the new general manager. Is that something that you arranged for them to meet with maybe the Exmouth Town councillors? As until I read this report, I wasn't aware that you had a new general manager in post, and I think that might be through the chair very useful if they were to at least meet the town council or do some kind of very quick presentation so that people are aware of who is who in what post. The next point I was to raise is you note that working to develop sessions with the Exmouth Community College, further updates will follow. Hopefully that further updates will follow because I think that's clearly something that is very, very great relevance. And turning to facilities, you had 7 recorded incidents. Is that sort of very significant, would you say, compared to other leisure centres, or are these what one might classify as very minor things? Because I note that you've put down the 7. And then finally, I am pleased to see that you have recorded that everything you do is designed to improve the customer experience. And I think that's probably one of the themes that will run throughout this meeting this morning. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Bruce. A number of questions there. Jamie, would you like to?
Yeah,
Answer
thank
now?
you, Chair. Thank you. I think in terms of meeting councillors, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I think Sean's been in post 4 weeks now. I think once he was settled, he's actually starting his week 4, saying that. Once he's settled, that is absolutely something we'd love to do. Actually, is to come and meet councillors because he's a member of our senior management team. So yeah, I think that's a really, really great shout, and I will set that up, Chair, if that's okay. Perhaps either through Sarah or through yourself and Sam, if that's all right. In terms of Exmouth College, that relationship is developing constantly, and certainly from a work perspective, we've actively targeted is the wrong expression, but we've worked to sort of work with school leavers to join us through swimming teaching, through lifeguarding, as really meaningful careers. Because I think very often they can be stopgaps, and we're keen to try and develop some meaningful careers for school leavers. So that's very much what our focus is, and we know there's a shortage in the supply chain, particularly for things like swimming teachers, whereas we can train some of these younger people and they can earn a good wage working in the leisure industry. So that's something we are continuing to develop. In terms of the incidents, it's pretty standard. We try and capture, as part of our zero harm safety culture, we want to be capturing every incident, accident, whether it be a member of the public, whether it be a member of our team. And say 7 in January is actually a tremendous number. Obviously, we'll always target 0. Realistically, you're not going to get 0, and they're pretty standard slips, trips, and falls that the team will look after on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, thanks for that full answer. Bruce, are you happy with that, or do you have any?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. I think that
Okay.
answers everything very, very well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Dent, Alan.
Yeah, just a quickie. The general manager's a bit anonymous. You managed to sneak out one bit of his name, Sean. What's his full name? So I'm down there quite often. I might just run into him. I'd like to know who he is, and he could know who I am. Sean Dent. No.
Day. No, you're dead. Sorry, Day. Not Day. Sorry, it's because I was looking at your name then.
What?
Day.
Sean Day. No, I'm dead, so I think. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Councillor Dent, please rest assured he does know who you are.
That might be the funniest moment in a council meeting I've known of for a while. Alan wondering whether he had a long lost relative he didn't know about working at LED. Anyway, so moving on to Councillor Rowland. Jack.
Sorry, I can't stop laughing yet. Gotta retain my equilibrium. Yeah, I was intrigued to read about the mention of social prescribing, and it mentioned Dorset and encouraging social prescribing, encouraging people into Axminster and Seaton. One side of me was thinking that's great, because I've never thought that county boundaries should be a limitation on helping with health and well-being issues in our area anyway. But it's good to see that social prescribing is still happening in Dorset then. But I just can somebody remind me about, was the funding definitely removed for the social prescribing in Devon? And this is why we're trying to encourage Dorset to get involved in helping within Devon.
Thanks, that's a really good question. I think that's one for Peter. You've been leading on this, haven't you, Peter?
Yeah, the funding hasn't stopped for the GP referrals, and that's still continuing, and that's still a very strong programme. What did change was the health coaches. If you remember, we had a bit of a campaign before Christmas to try and retain the health coaches, and most of those were lost, but they have been replaced in some cases with a different form of coaching program. So the focus within the health service, certainly within the local health partnerships, is on mental health. So less focus on signposting, that's the terminology now, less focus on signposting people to physical health activities and more towards mental health, of which, of course, physical activity is a massive benefit. So there are still considerable overlaps, and the program continues, but it's more of an emphasis on the mental health program, working with Devon Partnership rather than the local partnerships.
Thanks for that, Peter. Jack, are you satisfied? Would you like to follow up at all, or is that?
No, that's fine. Thanks,
Brilliant.
Peter. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, I think I think that's we've come to the end of that item, and again, I think it's an item to note. So I don't think we need to have a vote on that item, but we'll need to have a vote on the next item, which is agenda item 10, which is capital bids update report. We have a report by George Pineda Langford, who's the principal building surveyor at East End District Council. Over to you, George, if you're indeed there in the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. It's Tim here. I think George will probably come out in a minute if it's okay. I think this will probably be a bit of a double act between George and I, if that's okay, Chair. Yep. So I will cover some of the background. George will then cover the technical request to the forum in respect of the proposal set out within the appendix, which is around a pool water treatment energy management system, which George will explain what that actually means shortly. So in terms of the background, there were 12 bids relating to properties occupied by LED that were put forward before Christmas to the Capital Strategy and Allocations panel. This was a total of £3.1 million worth of bids, of which 7 were fully recommended, went on to Cabinet and on to Council. 2 were partially recommended, and at that time 3 projects were then referred to the LED Monitoring Forum. The total of the bids approved were circa £2.2 million. And I just want to sort of emphasise that the works that were approved relate to health and safety matters and also urgent condition matters. Both the panel and officers were acutely aware of not only the scale of the bids coming forward this year, but also the leisure review. So as I said, it was only the urgent condition, health and safety ones that were approved for those very reasons. Now, within Appendix A to the report, there's a table which helpfully sets out the detail of each of those bids and what category they fall into in terms of condition, urgent condition, health and safety, climate change, etc. And also details of which of those were approved and those that weren't approved. So that's Appendix A. In paragraph 1.7 of the report itself, it details the 3 requests which were to come to this forum. The other projects, the £2.1 million worth, having now gone through Cabinet and onto Council. Of those 3 bids, those 3 projects requests set out in paragraph 1.7, further to the writing of this report, there are some updates, which I think probably makes it slightly easier in terms of the considerations for this forum today. So in terms of the first bullet point under 1.7, so refurbishment of catering areas at Exmouth Pavilion, that particular request has subsequently been withdrawn for obvious reasons, now that we're looking somewhat more in depth at the future of that particular site. You've got also the light refurbishment of the changing rooms at Sidmouth swimming pool. Well, as many of you will know, that particular item was fast-tracked through to a recent Cabinet meeting where it was approved. So there's a 40k then approved by Cabinet from the National Leisure Recovery Fund. So those works were approved, and Jamie has just advised that those works are now starting. So that means that it's just the second bullet point, which is the installation of a pool water treatment energy management system at the 3 managed swimming pool sites that needs to be considered by this forum. And on that note, I will pass you over to my colleague George to sort of set out the technical details as to what that actually relates to. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. Basically, this is an energy management system that deals just with the filtration and circulation of the swimming pools. Basically, if you think about it, it is like in a human being, it would be the kidneys and basically the heart. Okay, so it's pretty much the most important thing in a swimming pool. And at the moment, the way it is set up is consuming too much energy. And what we're proposing to do is to install a management system that would basically optimize how it's working and therefore make some savings. Okay, so in Appendix B, you should have basically the details of the savings that we are basically forecasting. We are, in terms of energy bills, we are estimating, or we were estimating at the time that we produced this document, about £16,000 a year in terms of energy savings. Of course, the energy cost is gone up, so the savings will be slightly more. Just an important detail on that appendix, basically, there was an error which is covered in paragraph 1.12, and that basically is that we were expecting, well, we noted that we were expecting contribution of £25,000 because of dual use, but that's not the case at all. That's an error. So I just wanted to clarify that to everyone. And also, there is a little error. This is a typo at the very end on financial implications. It's not £362,500. It's basically £62,500. The funding that we're after to do this work. Okay, and maybe Peter wants to add something to that.
Before I do, I'll just make a little joke and say I'm glad that was corrected, because I was feared Councillor Rowan was going to have a heart attack when he saw that figure. We had a briefing yesterday in which it was spotted by Councillor Desarum, I think. He spotted the appendix, which was very, very good of him. But we spotted that, and I'm glad we did, because we could have been a quite confusing item. This so. We would like to hear from LED on this issue. Peter, would it be Bridget Jones who'd like to speak on this item, or yourself, Peter?
I'll pick it up if I may.
Okay.
So I think it's just worth explaining this from 2 points of view, really. I thought it was a very good description by George. It is the heart of the pool system, really. So at the moment, we manually control the pool. So if pumps need to be slowed down overnight or speeded up at peak times, if water needs to be replaced and topped up, it's all done through manual checks, which is not particularly efficient. This would be an automated system, which will significantly reduce the amount of water that we use. So there's a saving in water. In using less water, we'll use less gas to heat it and electricity to pump it. So we will save significant amount of electricity and gas costs, and also the customers will see an improvement in the quality of the water. The comment earlier about customer service, they will see an improvement in the quality of the water. And we'll also see some savings in maintenance, because pumps will be used less and scaled down more. So the system has a lot of benefits. The two main benefits are obvious. One is we will significantly save in our energy and water costs, which goes back to the question earlier from Councillor Rowland. I think it was about, from Councillor Gazzard about savings. So we'll save significantly on energy costs. And in my next paper, we pointed out that gas, for example, has gone from 2p a unit up to 9p a unit. We, in our budget, have forecasted a drop back down to 7p, but that was before Russia invaded Ukraine. So that may well go up significantly. So we will see a benefit in improved water quality. We'll see a benefit in savings from energy costs. And also, I think it ticks the other box for the council, that it's a step towards your carbon reduction target as well, because it will reduce our carbon footprint. So that's a summary of the benefits from this. The £62,000 cost, we think, is probably a little bit of an overestimate, to be cautious, and will come in under that. And with these savings, we think this system will probably pay for itself within 2 to 2.5 years. If we install it at the beginning of the next financial year, you'll see half that cost returned probably in the first year. So the sooner it's done, the better in terms of saving money and in terms of reducing our carbon footprint. Open to questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks to the officers who introduced the report, and over to the finance portfolio holder, Councillor Rowland. Jack.
Thank you. And thank you for thinking about my health, Chair. Yeah, I did notice that, and I thought, well, surely the cost couldn't have increased that much since we first had this on the agenda for the budget setting and capital allocation panel. I wanted advice from the officers first before I asked the question. In fact, as I actually chaired the budget setting and capital allocations panel that ended up making the decision to refer the decision to this panel, is it okay for me still to vote on this particular subject in view of me chairing that other committee? Is my first question to the officers.
Jack. Simon, could I pick it up through you? Or I'm just trying to think of which officer would be best placed to answer that question. I mean,
it looks like Debbie's unmuted herself, and I'm sure she'll be able.
I thought Debbie might come in, yeah.
Yeah.
Apologies, Debbie.
She's very good at normally giving me advice.
Thanks. Jack, I would say that really that's up to you, but I don't think you're if you vote now, then obviously you would need to just remind people of that if it's back then before the panel that you chair. But then bear in mind, obviously, that then goes forward to Cabinet. So ultimately, the decision is at Cabinet, of which you're a member. So I would say vote away, Jack, would be my advice. Thank you.
Always a sage advice from you, Debbie. Thank you. Okay. I suppose my next question was really directed to Simon, as he's here as well. I would just like to know as well, because of when we were looking at the overall amounts that were involved, if I remember rightly, if we'd approved everything, we were talking about £180,000 in interest per annum. So because we took some things out, Simon, could you remind me, if we approve this today, what that would add to the interest payments that we previously agreed?
See Simon on his calculator there.
Yeah, I'm sure. I meant to ask him before this meeting, so I apologise for asking him in the meeting.
In the meantime, whilst we wait, Simon, are you ready now? I can make a
copy. This through the chair. The sum wouldn't be significant. I would suggest it's under sort of probably 2,000 to 3,000. I can calculate it properly, but in terms of our overall capital programme, the sum, there'll be pluses and minuses during the year in terms of the sum approved. So 62,500 in our capital programme isn't material in terms of the overall position, so it wouldn't affect our general funds significantly, if that gives you some reassurance. Just to remind members, this will, if a recommendation comes through from this committee, it will be a recommendation through to Cabinet and would have to go on to Council, in that you're asking for a budget in year for the capital programme. But capital budgets, I'm content that capital budgets can happen in that way under certain circumstances. And also, just to emphasise the point of the payback period, Bridget calculated at just over 2 years, which is unusual for a capital scheme in terms of the shortness.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for that, Simon. And I think that argument that has just been made about the 2 years is what swings me in the direction of thinking this is a sensible sort of spend to save policy. But that's just my personal view. And obviously, it's a decision for this forum to then recommend upwards to Cabinet, which will be the ultimate decision maker on this issue. So next on my speakers list is Councillor de Sarum. Bruce.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it seems very positive, particularly as we've heard earlier this morning from Councillor Dent about swimming when we looked at the chart. And I was just going to ask briefly, were there any specific reasons why a review at Sidmouth wasn't completed? Apologies if I did miss your response, but that's the only thought that puzzled me, because I know you've been very specific about Exmouth and Honiton, and you mentioned that you hadn't completed this review. So could I inquire as to if a review would be conducted at on page 2 of your report? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bruce. George, yeah, over to you.
Yeah, basically, if this gets approved, obviously we're gonna carry on the rest of the reviews and update the reviews that we have existing. So it is basically part of the process. We're just not going to go ahead and install something without having a review done. So it will be done properly, it will be assessed, and we will come out with a system that will be specifically bespoke for Sidmouth swimming pool.
Thank you very much, George. Appreciate it.
Okay. Before I bring in the portfolio holder to Councillor Hookway, I'd see that Peter's got his hand up. Hope that's okay with you, Nick. Peter, do you want to come in on this point specifically?
Yeah, I can just update George and the new meeting. Sidmouth was excluded because it's had a lot of work done and its pool flow system has been improved. So the benefits were much less to be gained at Sidmouth, and it wasn't deemed that there'd be a significant enough return on the investment. So it's the other two pools which haven't had that upgrade done where the most significant savings and benefits will be found.
Okay, thanks for that, Peter. So I'll bring in now the portfolio holder responsible for leisure, Councillor Hookway. Nick. Hi, Nick.
Good morning. Hi, thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted really to get a bit of clarification because I may have had a break. I think the installation of this energy management system is a very sensible idea. I've got down that the cost is going to be £62,500. Can somebody just reconfirm to me, so I got it absolutely right, where exactly is this money coming from, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Question for Simon, I think.
Yeah, it's a capital project, councillor, so it'll go onto our capital programme. It will be added to the sum in year, so there'll be a combination of using capital money available to us. It may require borrowing for our overall capital programme, but as I was inferring, in terms of our overall capital budget, 62,000 isn't a significant sum to throw out the allowance we've made in year as the effect on our general fund for interest and debt repayment. So it won't have a knock-on effect to our general fund position in year because it's not a large enough sum to throw out the assumptions we've made for the year.
Right.
If that makes sense. Sorry, I waffled a bit there, Councillor.
No, I think I've got the gist of that. Thank you very much. That's reassuring. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I'll bring in the strategic lead officer for this area, John Golding. John.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just probe a little bit on the climate change impact of what's being proposed here? So I see a helpful statement in paragraph 1.9, but above that, where the climate change element of the report that needs to be filled in refers to low impact. So I'm not quite sure whether, to what extent the energy management system will actually impact on our carbon footprint, of which we include LED as part of the council's carbon footprint. So it'd just be useful if there could be a little bit more information, some figures referred to earlier, and also whether this is part of a larger programme of works for the swimming pools, because whilst energy management is great and will save some carbon, are we exploring other areas of work such as solar panels on the roofs and alternative fuel sources for heating swimming pools? It'd be just useful to have a little bit more detail if indeed that's available at this stage. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, John. Really good questions. Anybody from LED able to?
If I may, Chair. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're probably talking about two, a short term and then a longer term issue here, John. So short term, what this does is reduces the amount of water that's used and improves the quality of the water. So by reducing the amount of water, you reduce the heating. So will we use less gas? We'll use less electricity with the pumps because we'll be pumping less circulation around. So it's an immediate benefit in terms of reducing gas and electricity costs. In terms of other, and I also should say, we've also done quite a lot of work on swimming pools, as Tim will know from work over the last few years. A lot of improvements to swimming pool plant has taken place. We're putting in variable speed drives and things like this. So a variable speed drive, for example, is what slows up and speeds down the pumps. But what I was saying earlier is we do that manually, or whereas this system will control it all automatically. So so we've done a lot of work on upgrading pool plants in the past. In terms of solar panels and maybe air source heat pumps, things like this, I think they are definitely something that we need to look at, particularly with swimming pools, which are high use, high energy users, probably your biggest energy consumers in the district are the 3 swimming pools. So in terms of solar panels, air source heat pumps, things like that, that's definitely something which I understand is going to be looked at as part of your carbon footprint reduction, but that's more medium to long term planning. And we have had surveys done of our roofs to see which ones could take solar panels. So we've got some proposals which can be reviewed once the leisure strategy's been complete. So there is a short-term gain, as I said, and John and Simon reiterated, you know, we would see a return on this investment within, I would say, 2 to 2.5 years quite comfortably in terms of immediate energy savings. And then the longer term ones I'm very keen to look at with the council in terms of things like solar panels, air source heat pumps and so on.
Okay, thanks for that, Peter. So Tim and George, which one of you want to go first? Is your double act today? I'll let you decide.
George, shall I just go first, if that's okay?
Yeah, you go first.
George, you might be able to add some more. There might be some more technical background behind it, but just very, very high level, I suppose. So yeah, all of what Peter said, yes, it's all included within our service plan, also within our climate change action plan. It picks up a number of measures. The difference between this one and those others aren't yet costed. So they're in the service plan, they're in the climate change action plan, but they aren't yet costed. So I'd envisage that they will work through the process to then lead to potentially a capital bid next year. So that's sort of the process. But yeah, there is much more proposed than just what we've been talking about in this meeting. And I think we just to re-emphasise what Peter has said, yeah, in terms of our assets, alongside our two main corporate office buildings, and I suppose our depots, our leisure centres across the district tend to be our largest assets. So yeah, huge potential and huge responsibility to do something. So George, I don't know if you wanted to add in more detail.
Yeah, in fact, one of the capital bids is basically to commission a study of the energy efficiency in all the LED properties. So that's basically going to happen. It was partially approved, and the element that was approved is the element of appointing a consultant, basically specializing in this area, to look at what energy efficiencies we can achieve and the best way to achieve them. Okay, so that's one element. In terms of this particular project, just to give you some figures in terms of emissions. At the moment, it is estimated that the annual CO2 tons is 37.7 tons. We are projecting that we're going to be, after we do the installation, we're going to be producing 14.2 tons of CO2. This is only at Honeyson. And that basically is a saving of 23 CO2 tons, okay, per year. basically similar picture in Exmouth. In Exmouth, we are basically saving 21 tons of CO2. Okay, so those are basically some figures that will put things into context as well.
Thank you both, George and Tim. That does put things into context. I'm really pleased to hear that level of detail, which I think is really good for the forum. Great to welcome Councillor Eleanor to the meeting. Hi, Eleanor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. So I did want to say I do actually know a little bit about the pump optimizing, energy consumption optimizing things, because my brother fits them, and he fits them in the States to pumps that run all the time in hotel chains and farms. The Americans, not really generally given, they don't really care too much about the cost of energy because their energy is so much cheaper. But even there, they're fitting them because they actually do work really well at optimizing the running of pumps that are on all the time. The other thing I wanted to note as well is that the energy prices are only going to go one way. They're not going to go back down again. And so as the years go on, it may be that we save even more by fitting these devices that optimize the use of electricity. I mean, and for me, from a financial point of view, for general financial prudence, but also from an environmental point of view, it's a no-brainer to do this, because one of the biggest costs of swimming pools is actually heating them and cleaning them. So if any way we can find to do this more cheaply in the long run and in a cleaner way, it gets my vote every time, because it reduces our dependence on increasing energy costs. And it may look like a lot of money now, but it could then turn out to be the best decision we make for LED right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eleanor. I personally completely agree with what you say, and it brings us back actually quite neatly to this report's recommendations that have been drafted by the officers for consideration by the forum. A and C are simply noting, but B is considering the proposal referred by the budget setting and capital bid allocation panel and whether the project should be funded. And that's referring to the swimming pool management system. Now, I think we should take a vote therefore on whether we want to be recommending up to Cabinet as a forum. We've been asked as a forum to give a view, so I would suggest we have a vote on that. Debbie, do you think that sounds sensible to go straight to a vote? If anybody else would like to make to speak or put forward an alternative recommendation, very, very happy to hear that, but I think that would probably be a good way forward. It's either a yes or a no. Debbie?
Yep, of course, Chair. Sarah, are you happy to run a vote?
Yes, of course. Yep. So if members of the forum could please raise their electronic hand to vote in favour, or red cross to vote against, or raise their hand.
So it's green.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
Oh, it's okay. So it's green tick for yes, red cross for no, and I could have done this. It's just my first time chairing, so I'm sorry about that. And raising hand for abstention, and it's green tick for investing into the funding and cross into the swimming pool management system, and a red cross for not doing so. Thanks. So back over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. So we have 7 votes in favour, 7 green ticks. Thank you.
Brilliant. I think that's fairly unanimous. Thank you very much for that, and thanks forum members for that, which I thought was a really, really good debate. So I believe that brings the public part of our consultation meeting to an end. However, can I just remind all those present, the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live,